Where's my, see if we're live on Zoom. Here we go.
Carlen show is July 1st, 2020. And I'm Wayne, coming all the way from California.
And coming down from the Gulf Coast in Texas, I'm Carlen, and we're glad to have you on this version of the Wayne Carlen Show. Today on the Wayne Carlen Show, the first thing I want to do is talk to you all about what does it mean to really erase race. I've talked about that a lot. It's the title of our organization, our nonprofit. But a lot of people get confused when they hear that because they're not sure if we're talking about erase culture, erase history, even though we do simply say erase race, because so there's a lot of confusion. So let's talk about that for a while. We really believe that erase race, that race is the problem, not racism, but that race is the problem. And we've got some historical background to support that. And so our concept is then to erase that construct of race. It's a social construct and we want to erase that. And what does erase mean? Erase stands for erase race and strengthen ethics. And so that's what we really do want to do. We want to do the thing that Dr. King talked about, and that is we want to begin to judge people not simply by the way that they look or the color of their skin, but instead by who they really are. And we think that's their character. And so when we say erase race, we're talking about let's remove obstacles to actually knowing who people really are. And so relationships is a big portion of what we do at Erase Race, developing relationships. And the amazing thing is what we do at Erase Race is we take relationships that are distant or at extremes from each other. And so you might have someone on the far left side or the far right side. We don't spend a lot of time evaluating whether or not they are right or wrong in their beliefs. We want to bring them together because we believe that in the middle and in the discussion that happens by bringing people together, that's where we can really get to solutions. And that's what's most important. So that's what we really want to do here at Erase Race.
Yeah, I remember a couple of years ago when we first had conversations about this, and I was one of those people thinking, no, you're trying to erase culture, you're trying to erase history. And after discussing it and getting into more detail with it, I kind of now understand what the original thought philosophy was going behind it. And if we don't build those relationships with people from different neighborhoods or maybe from the same neighborhood, but we just neglected to get to know because we didn't look alike, we're going to continue on the same path. So we do need to get to know people and build relationships with people. So yeah, so before we go on with today we're going to talk about our erase stories. We need to talk a little bit about what's happening with the coronavirus. It seems like, people have been predicting this second wave for a long time. And now if you watch the news, it appears that it's coming and it's coming strong. What do you think?
Yeah, I think this is indicative of what happens when you really don't have leadership, because leadership, one thing that you want from leadership, it doesn't matter if you're a football coach and your team is behind in the fourth quarter. You want to have the optimism and the thought that you can win, that you're going the right direction. We can't be behind in the fourth quarter and still not scoring. We've got to start scoring at some point, because maybe we didn't score in the first, second, and third quarter, but now it's game time is on and we've got to start scoring. And so in leadership, this is called getting further behind. We're not going the right direction. So it's a leadership issue. And in Texas, our governor, he put a pause on the reopening and a lot of the phases that he had planned. Making some adjustments. And I think that's probably true both on the West Coast in California and in Florida as well. So we've got to do some things that take us the right direction. And we were learning, and I think there's a lot of learning that had to take place because this is not common. So everyone had a little patience with that. But at this point, we know too much to be making some of the same mistakes and errors. And so I think we've got to start doing the right things and going the right direction.
Yeah, I mean, a telltale sign is the EU just announced yesterday that they were, again, banning all travel from the U.S. to the European Union. And that says a lot. We were hoping, I have a travel business. And so obviously I'm hoping that the travel industry opens back up as soon as possible. But at the same time, people have to be safe. We have travel plans. We have travel plans in Mexico. We have travel plans in Egypt, and you had plans as well. We were both supposed to be out of country. We went to Haiti and Africa this year, but some of those things are going to be postponed for now until things can be brought back under control.
And that's really tough for us too, because when we talk about what we do here at Erase Race, so much of what we talk about is the relationship building, and that comes from really person to person, in person contact. And so yeah, we can do some of these things electronically via Zoom and things like that, but it's just really not as good as being face to face and shaking hands and touching people. And so a lot of people have had to alter their means of doing business, and so it's very tough, and we've got to learn to adapt. And so that's kind of where we are.
What do you think about the president's rally coming up this Saturday, 4th of July? And I guess he's going to go to the monuments, and it's supposed to be open rally, no mask, no social distancing. Thousands and thousands of people are predicted to be there. Your thoughts?
Yeah, and see, my personal view on the president really doesn't matter, and most people need to understand that I'm not a supporter or an anti any of the presidents. I kind of look at them objectively because, like I said, I based most everything I do on leadership and are they doing the right things or the wrong things. And so in this particular case, it has nothing to do with my personal views, but I think that's absolutely the wrong thing, especially when you're going in the wrong direction. And those things have been shown to keep you going in the wrong direction. And so you've got to at some point begin to put your personal preferences and things you'd like behind you. I would love to be traveling. I love getting in my vehicle, driving around the country, meeting people, which I did from June to December of last year. But when coronavirus came, then I stopped that, because I realized it's fraught with peril, not only for me, but for others, and so, you want people to understand, you want to set the example of what you think needs to happen. And so I think the president should be doing that. And I think it sends a very bad message. And I think our numbers could continue to go up. Like Dr. Fauci was saying, if we could get to 100,000 cases per day, there's a reason for that. And these are the realities of where we are. And we've got to deal with those realities and not hoping, because I think the president hopes that this thing will just go away. I heard him say in one conversation, it's just going to disappear. That would be nice if we were all ghosts and we could just make things disappear like that with some magician's trick. It's not really happening. Not really happening.
Right. Yeah, I know the NBA is hoping to start back up and play in their bubble in Miami, not Miami, but Orlando coming up. But now they're even thinking about that again, whether that's going to happen. They were going to try to control everything as best they can, but if players are not feeling comfortable about it, it's not going to
happen. Yeah. Boy, that's going to be a different country, isn't it? If we start, here are the big issues. Will schools start up in the fall?
Yes.
Will we have sports in the fall? And they go together. And when you think about high school level, you got the sports that goes along with that. So how will all these things be conducted? Because if things don't, and that's the thing why what Trump is doing is so important, because if things continue to escalate and our numbers are getting worse, then it just pushes that stuff further down the road when we could actually really start and have a viable education program that we had before, or sports that we've had before. The more he puts that off, the more drastically things will change. And I don't know if he wants those drastic changes to happen prior to November 3rd, which I think would be very important for him, because I think his effort is to try to make things seem as normal as possible prior to November 3rd. He wants to see a return economically. He wants to see a return of people going to work and living their lives, but he doesn't understand that what he's doing is furthering the opportunity for that to happen. And so it's going to be interesting to see in the fall what really takes place.
Yeah.
America could be a different place. Can you imagine America with no professional sports on? Because we've been doing this for the last few months and it's been terrible. That's why Michael Jordan's show got so watched, because everybody was starving for some pro sports. We didn't realize how addicted we were to that stuff. So it's going to be a different America for us. So, hey, we got our show today. Let's talk about an erase story. I got an erase story that I think we want to dialogue and talk about, because I think it's indicative of really how deep the race issue goes and how it permeates every area, not only of our society, but of our thought. We grew up and we don't know this. We didn't know this until we got smart enough, maybe a few years ago. We didn't realize that we grew up racialized, that American culture makes us see everybody based on skin color. We just do. And that's not something that happens in every other country. We think it is because we are so, we get hit with it so early in our lives, and so much of our culture is race based that we don't realize it as Americans, but it is. And so from there, I have a story, because I grew up, of course, in a segregated city, Prairie View, Texas. It was all black, and we integrated when I went to second grade. So when I was 7 years old, I went to an integrated school. We got bused. We started getting bused, and so that was 1969. Yeah, 1969. So, and I, as a child, I was just, they were just more kids. I really hadn't thought about it, because when you grew up in, I think, and that's what's amazing, you don't understand race when you grew up in a homogeneous society. When you grew up with all one type of people, they were all black, you don't really think about race at all, because you're just judging people based on people. But so when you change that in the second grade, you still think the same way. Well, these are just people. They're people that don't look like me. So you don't think, wow, they're white, they're different, because you've never had conversations with your parents about white people. You've only talked about people. So that's kind of the environment that I grew up in. And integrated high school. And of course, then you began to understand as you got older that there were these issues of white and black by things that happened in the rest of society, and even some things that happened in school there. So you began to understand that. So that was one of the determining factors on where I would choose to go to college. And so I went to a college that was integrated, because I didn't want to go to a segregated institution, because I lived in Prairie View, which is an HBCU. And at that time, I just thought of it as what people deemed a black college. And so my deal was, number one, and I was kind of upset too, because I thought I was a football star in high school, and Prairie View, the black college, wouldn't offer me a scholarship. Or they didn't even talk to me. They didn't even have me come visit. Took me for granted because I lived there in my hometown. Now I go to this NCAA Division I school, North Texas, and I walk on and get a scholarship. And so I was kind of frustrated, and it was like, that they didn't ask. So but that had nothing to do with really race. That was just my personal thing.
Right.
All right. So, but anyway, so I go to the school, North Texas, and I befriend this other freshman who was there. I was a walk-on and got the scholarship. And this guy was recruited as a quarterback, star quarterback from the area in Dallas, Fort Worth area, led his team to the playoffs and ran for all these yards and everything like that. And so we were there together and became good friends. I was eventually in his wedding. So it was only in a conversation that I had with him last week, as I discussed race at our North Texas program in the early 1980s. We were freshmen in 1980. And so this is what makes it a Grady race story. He's talking with one of our fellow another quarterback who was on our team, who happened to be black. And so my friend there was white, and they were both quarterbacks. They were making their assessment. I asked a general question: did you ever experience race at our football program? Did you ever experience race in any form, or this thing that you would deem racism? Everybody, to a man, all the people that I had on there, former teammates, they all said, no, never, ever. And all the time they were there, never any racial incidents whatsoever. That was amazing to me that they would say that. However, the black quarterback said he thought he experienced it though from our head coach. And so everybody knew our head coach. So immediately the white quarterback speaks up and says, yeah, but that wasn't racism. That was just, he wanted to run a particular type of offense that I was good at running and that you weren't as good at running. You were a drop back quarterback. I was the runner, which is often different when you think about it in our context of the way we view things on race. We always think of the black quarterback as the runner and the white quarterback as the passer, And so here you have that dynamic, which is totally different. And the white quarterback said that he was recruited because of all the yards he rushed for. And that was the skill of the coach. He liked running quarterbacks. So whenever our coach did something with the black quarterback took it as, he doesn't like me because I'm black, because his substitutes to put in, if he didn't have to play the black quarterback, were white. So the black quarterback never saw it as he wants the running quarterback. He saw it as the black quarterback. So the discussion continued with the others on the team. And so the other quote unquote blacks on the team thought that he did mistreat the black quarterback. But it was through the discussion that we had this past week. So 40 years later, the discussion we had was, wow, maybe it wasn't race as we thought, because number one, there was no other race that we ever experienced with other parts of the team, because usually when the leader has race or does something because of race, it permeates the organization or they pass it down. So we never had that. We never had any racial incidents. And then the kicker was, for me, when I was a freshman, I had to walk on. He was the guy who made the determination on who got the scholarship to be a part of the team. Mm-hmm. I got it. And there were a lot of guys walking on who were other colors didn't get it. So to me, that kind of nailed it that, well, I guess he's not racist. Maybe he did just prefer having a running quarterback rather than a passing quarterback. And so we kind of put that in context. And I don't think that quarterback, that senior quarterback, had ever even thought about it. And then he walked away from our discussion saying, wow, for all these years, I've thought that it was just race, when it probably wasn't race. It was probably just that was his coaching style. He wanted a running quarterback, and that might have been the reason he wanted him in the first place. He thought racially, maybe, you're a black guy, I want you to run, but he was a passer, you know? So it's just, you know, and it's only through that dialogue. And that's why we push that erase race, have that dialogue. And think about it, in our country, most people aren't bringing people to the table and saying, well, let's talk about that and let's see if this thing is race. We don't do that. We assume and we throw everything into the race box and we start from there. And so we never really deal what could be the issues. And not saying that in some of these cases, it wouldn't be race, because we clearly understand that there are some cases where that could be the deal. But when we artificially or automatically throw it into the race box and start from there, I think we miss out on the opportunities for real solutions to our problems. So that's an erase race story. You might have one of your own. You get an opportunity. You can go to our website, eraseracist.com, and click on that link, erase story. Submit your erase story to us, because we want to share that. And if we do share that, we'll send you one of our Erase Race t-shirts. You can get one. Well, probably not like the one I've got, although these are out there on our website. You can get one of these on our website, but the one Wayne's got is the one we'll probably send you. Okay. So we would love to have your erase story, because it's going to help everybody understand everything's not about race, and it'll speed up the day when we can really erase race and get rid of that concept altogether. Okay.
Yeah. It's so sad, because that concept, it's definitely doing what it was designed to do. And it was designed to do that hundreds of years ago, to divide and conquer, right? The house divided against itself cannot stand.
Yes.
And it's doing a really good job at that. So it's going to take a lot of people like us and others who have decided that no longer are they going to allow that false concept to continue to control their lives. You know, it sounds good. And yeah, a lot of identity is involved in it. You know, at some point we'll talk about that as well. But we just need to move forward into understanding what did God really intend.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So,
yep.
You know, talking about that, I don't know if you were paying attention to what's been going on in Mississippi. You know, talking about identity. You know, for years and years, ever since the Civil War, really, Mississippians and other people have continued to fly the Confederate flag, because they identify, and they say they have reasons. They talk about historical significance and different things like that. It's not how we feel right now. It's history. Well, their state Senate have just basically decided it's time to take it down. And I even saw an interview from the president of the Confederacy, Jefferson Davis, his great-great-grandson, who spoke, and he spoke very, very clearly. He said, you know, he agreed that it was time. Put it in a museum for those who want to continue to not worship it per se, but just, you know, acknowledge it. Let it be in a museum where can be done. But since that flag is offensive to many people, not just people of African descent and former slaves, descendants of former slaves, but other people as well, it's time to put it away. And so kudos to Mississippi on finally, after all these years, realizing that needs to come down.
And that's great, because while we're relegating things like the flags to museums and things like that, and even maybe some of these statues that they're talking about, relegating them to museums, we need to relegate race itself to a museum. I mean, this really needs to be a concept that people, I think about my grandson, and I made a Facebook post that showed me with my grandson. And I said, if he ever has to defend what color he is, that means I failed at my task here. And I think we failed as a country if our grandchildren are still arguing about these same things about color that we're arguing about. Those things really do need to be relegated to a museum, a place where people can look back and say, I can't believe, it's hard for me to believe that people actually thought like this. I can't believe that people actually lived like this and thought that of other people. And so flags, statues, race, all these things need to go the way of the dinosaur. They need to become extinct, and we can talk about them kind of like we do dinosaurs, build museums and places where we can go see them only.
Well, how do you think the American church, the church that we're both part of, we're Christians, there's certain movement now towards removing um, paintings, statues that depict a European looking Jesus. We know it's not Jesus because nobody actually did an actual painting of him when he walked the earth, but it was a depiction of him. And now there's been calls to remove all of those paintings and statues and everything. I guess that'll include movies too. I don't know. Man, where is that going to lead?
Yeah, and I think that's important because I had that a Facebook post that said if we all desired to live more like Jesus, we'd care less what color his skin was.
I like
And
that.
so we wouldn't have these kind of discussions. But I think in view of what's happening everywhere else, when we have these discussions, I think the church needs to basically understand they need to have the right viewpoint, which is we're not concerned really about the color, because based on scripture, we're not concerned about the color. We want the principles here. And if you go to Africa, you'll find out that the Jesus that they identify is a darker skin. And it's kind of like, to me, the same thing that happened when I went to Japan the first time and understood when I went to KFC, I didn't know Colonel Sanders was Japanese. People will make these things in their image. And I don't think it should overwhelm us. I think what we need to do, especially the church, we need to start espousing and living the principles more than we're concerned about these superficial things that the world is really fighting against. And so it's a tough one because, yeah, you don't want to misportray. And if that becomes an issue, let's not portray him at all. Let's talk about what he said. Let's live what he lived. Let's do that. And I think if we did that, then we wouldn't have to worry about these issues so much.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that, and I know we got to wrap up now, but that's one of the things that the Muslims, they don't allow depictions of, either Muhammad or any kind of image of what they think God would look like. They don't allow that. So, why have them at all? That's a very good point.
Mm-hmm. All right. So, hey, well, we're about out of time for our show today. We want to thank you for being part of our show today. And remember, we want everybody to go out to our website, check us out at eraseraces.com. We got a great store out there where you can get T-shirts, things like that. You can submit your erase story. We'd love to have your story, because one of the things I encountered as I traveled the country, everybody's got a story. Even people who grew up in more segregated societies have a story of things that they felt about others and the way that they were prone to change based on the things that they found out later in life. So submit your erase story. Remember, you can get a T-shirt sent to you if we use your story on air, and we're looking for stories that we can use. So go out and submit that now at eraseraces@gmail.com. Send it in video format, send it in text format, and we'll see if we can share that. And remember, we want you to all keep talking with each other, because that's the only way we will walk with each other. And we will get to that day when we will live without being judged by the color of our skin, but instead by the content of our character. And we will then enjoy a society that in effect has actually erased race. So we want to thank y'all for coming to our show today. That's it for me and Wayne from the West Coast. We're out.